Hi, everyone. So excited to be here, especially with my good friends Dave and Charles. If you don't know them, you probably haven't been watching the show lately. So we're glad to introduce you to us today. Our topic of conversation is going to be social media. It seems like it's a strong point wherever you go. And we spent a lot of time actually last week talking about it. So I figured why not make a full topic about it. So with that said, I'm just opening chat. So if anybody's got something to say, we're glad to hear it. As Charles always states, always happy to know where you're from, make yourself known. If we can be more relevant and specific to your possible needs, that's what we're primarily here for. So with that, I'll swing it over to Dave and we'll get it going.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Don. Nice to see Charles here. As always, glad to be here and look forward to this every part of my week. It's a highlight. First thoughts on social media. I thought, as you said, Don, it was a great transition from talking from technology last week. And my initial thoughts with social media, just very basic. Just like with technology, there's a double-edged sword. We have to find a balance between what we're ready for and what we're able to handle, because there are positives and negatives to everything that we do, and we need to be planning out what it is we expect to do with social media, for better or for worse.
Okay, well, I think that's a good start. So, Charles, take it from there.
Yeah, I think that one thing people don't understand about social media is that they're constantly striving for perfection. And that's actually not something that I think a lot of people watching, a lot of the audience like. And this is one of the problems with AI, because AI can make things so perfect. You can often tell when something's written by AI, but not only that, but it makes it so perfect you lose the vulnerability. And nowadays people love raw, they love vulnerable, they love hearing what people are saying from their heart. And that's really something for people to embrace and take into consideration.
Well, that's great. You make a good point. Looks like all channels are working. Thank you for the suggestion. And to take it from what Charles has said, social media should be social and not so much media. So I think it's the communication that counts, not the really great graphics and the pictures, because I think it is a little delusional, or it makes you think someone is doing or being something they're not really in real life. And you compound that with someone coming back with their illusion or their image, and with emojis and with everything else. Everybody's got a pretty good arsenal of weapons, in a sense, that they can bring to bear, especially on unsuspecting people. I mean, we're pretty sophisticated because, spending so much time on live streams, posting, doing all this stuff, we get a pretty good sense of it. But we're in a very small minority of people who are actually in the swim of things. And I think that's important, to know how to communicate directly to the audience that's really participating with you in what other social media you might have. Charles just came up with. Thanks for joining us. Please let us know from where you're viewing. Hopefully, since LinkedIn is now tied in, we'll probably get some LinkedIn people. Dave, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think your point on being social is very key. And I think too many people have taken to becoming keyboard warriors, and things that they wouldn't have said personally have been shared publicly via social media. And so it's not as social or as engaging as it could be. It's become in many ways a negative source of information for people, and that's driven a huge part of our depression amongst teenagers, because again, their brains aren't as developed as yours and mine are, and it takes still we're 25 or 26 for males in particular. So what they're seeing is this perfection online, or they're hearing nasty comments, and it's causing negative feedback. And again, I go back to my opening statement. Having a plan or a a process under which you're going to execute something, what is your intent with social media? If it's to compare yourselves against other people, well, then you're going to get the nasty, because people are always going to put forward the best and you're going to compare yourself, or you're going to get negative feedback and you're not going to appreciate it. But if you go into it looking for, I'm here to share my story and I don't care what anybody says, I'll cut comments, fine. I just saw, a reason I guess I'm a little bit hard up on the negative side is I just saw a friend of mine see the negative effects of social media because somebody started pretty much an information campaign against her via social media, and it got her kicked out of a conference at which she was speaking. But there was no follow up on, well, what is the ground truth? It was just taken off the social media comments, and that's where I kind of am taking a negative view, and I'll change my perspective through the next 45 minutes or so.
Well, I think you make some very valid points. And, it is a double-edged sword depending on how it's used or how you use it. We do have Leslie Flowers in the house. Thank you, Leslie. Leslie is just can't say enough about what she does for people. Her new carousel is out there promoting so many great shows. And not only that, it allows people who have carousels to network with the other people in the carousel. So it's really a networking and a promotional opportunity. So Leslie's just a genius when it comes to sharing and giving. So thank you for that. We've got Jocelyn from California. Thanks for making yourself known. So happy you're here today. If there's anything that you have a question about what we say or just a question about what you think, please bring it to the table. We're here for you. And Leslie goes into more detail with our specific names. So Leslie, I know you're going to be a participant today. You always are. So can't thank you enough. So I'll just keep trying. With that said, we'll go on to Charles.
Yeah, I can see that one of the things we're talking about, social media, or maybe the misnomers or the things that people don't understand. And one thing is, a lot of people talk about the algorithm as if it's a single thing, but each social media has a different type of algorithm. TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, formerly Twitter, they all use a complex, ever-changing mix of algorithms, and each one's optimized for a different goal, for retention, for connection, for ad revenue, for spreading news now. I think that X.com, formerly Twitter, feels strange saying X.com, is where a lot of people are just constantly going for news. And I think that Twitter is going up and down, and it's probably rising back up now after going through a bad patch a couple of years ago when it was originally taken over. So, the algorithm is different. And that's something for people to realize. And also, a lot of people talk about shadow banning, and they're very, if they don't get a lot of views on a particular post, they say, oh, I've been shadow banned, which is not necessarily true. It's probably unlikely that people are shadow banned. And it is real, but it's often a glitch. And it's frequently not a punitive measure. It's just kind of caused by some kind of accidental misuse of guidelines, terms and conditions, or buggy spam filters, using too many hashtags, or copying too many people, and or using an AI image that looks too AI-y, and that particular platform might downgrade. They're not actually shadow banning. They might just be downgrading it. The other thing I've noticed, it's extremely popular right now, and this speaks to my earlier point about raw, is that people love seeing personal pictures. And even on LinkedIn, if you do a personal post in a professional angle, it's very, very, very popular, and people tend to like that. And again, it comes around to people being vulnerable, being raw. It's very interesting to see people who've grown large followings on LinkedIn and to go in and look at their images just to see, okay, what were they posting 3 years ago? And you can see the progression of the images over time. It's really fascinating to kind of study it, even just anecdotally.
Yeah, you make a wonderful point, Charles, because I've noticed that too. Because when you talk about the person instead of the promotion the person has, right? And it usually history speaks, especially like Father's Day, Mother's Day, people start posting their pictures of with their parents or just their parents alone. You want to know more about the person, and that tells you something, right? When people try to look smart, act smart, be smart, it's pretty obvious, and it's not something that's totally attractive or is valuable. So it's really about how do you stage communication. The other thing that I noticed is how social media gets to amplify regular media. To give you an example, just without Jimmy, whatever his name, the guy who got tossed off the air, uh,
Kimmel.
Kimmel. Uh, he had 6 million views of that TV show. It was sparked basically because people knowing situations through social media. But what was amplified is it had 26 million views on YouTube and Facebook and those channels. So something that had 6 million, that was or 5 or 6 times as normal audience, then gets magnified 4 times from that. You can see how a little seed can grow to a big whatever. And if that's continuous, right, you can get known really fast, but you might get known for the things you don't want to, or vice versa. Uh, we've got Leslie, interesting. Charles, yes, the pictures, good point. Jocelyn says it was very insightful. Thank you for coming and staying. And like I say, any questions, we're here for you. So on to Dave.
Yeah, a couple of points. To Charles, your point on pictures and what I think we get from the rawness. I think the other word is vulnerability. When we start seeing the human side instead of the AI or the canned product that we're putting out. It's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to everybody. Ha, great. That doesn't really explain anything about the person, to your point, Don, of getting to know who they are and get beyond the product. So vulnerability, and I'm a big proponent of Brene Brown, Daring Greatly, because about 5 years ago during COVID, I think it was just before COVID, I started reading that. And excuse me. Oh, my apologies. I think when we start to show vulnerability, it starts to show the human side, and it takes away from the algorithms, the technical side of what social media should be about. And then as far as Jimmy Kimmel, and to your point, Don, what social media has done, I think you're trying to say, is it's amplified the news cycle. Mm-hmm. Instead of Walter Cronkite saying this is how it is, or I forget what his line was, but just the news, and then we get it for half an hour. Now we get this constant. And with CNN, it was 24 hours a day, headline news. You get the same news every half hour, and any updates, they would change it. But now we get just bombarded where we can look at everything over time. And that's one of the things, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but I think that social media had a great impact on the Charlie Kirk murder, was people could see it near real time, where we can see that, not that we want to go look at the actual shot, but the fact that it led up to it, and it's just amplified that we can relate to it better than just something that, I think when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when he first passed, was Minnesota assassinations. We didn't really get that in the news cycle because it wasn't visual. We couldn't see it on social media, but social media has amplified the news, and we can relate to it better because it's out there for us to review over time, just like Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, great points. Charles?
Yeah, on that point, I mean, you're absolutely right. That I think it was 11 years before the tape of the JFK assassination was shown to the public.
Yeah.
And it was probably 11 seconds before it was spread across social media in the case of Charlie Kirk. And that sequence of images, if you were, if you were going to go see Saving Private Ryan or something like that, that would be a highly, I don't know if it would be an R-rated movie, but it would be, it would have an adult rating on there, and yet everybody had access to seeing that instantaneously. And one thing that I thought was wise was how amongst the flurry of things that were going on, people started really exercising restraint and said, stop forwarding the images. They're not healthy for people. No matter where you're sitting on the spectrum, they're just unhealthy, and stop spreading them around. And I think that my sense of that was that people took that to heart and stopped spreading it around. So yeah, really, that was a tragic situation. But one thing I want to emphasize is that a lot of people focus on vanity metrics, switching lanes a little bit. And the only metric that really matters is whether people are capturing a sliver of someone's attention. Because where attention goes, money eventually flows. And that's something for people to, again, it comes back to the vulnerability part. It's about attention. It's not about followers. And, somebody who has a smaller number of followers but has incredible engagement is going to be getting a lot more attention than someone who has a huge number of followers but low engagement. And that's another thing that I do when I see people with large numbers of followers, is I'll often look at their engagement and do just some quick math in my head to see what percentage engagement do they have against some of their posts, to see how engaged their audience really are compared to someone who has a much smaller following, but clearly has a much higher level of engagement.
Yeah, you're exactly right on all those points. I think another dynamic is, in the past, you received news, you didn't continue to distribute news. So if we talk about the old days with Walter Cronkite and those broadcasters, you had a personal experience, you got the news, and you went on your way. Now you get something you see or sent to you, and then you resend it. And then you resend it with commentary. So not only are people looking at it individually, they're also looking at it as a team or as a group, right? So you can look at anything and both sides will see something else. And that's just saying both sides. There's hundreds of sides, different angles, different perspectives. And people get sucked into it because all of a sudden they're doing things that are unnatural to their daily life, right? They're neglecting their responsibilities, their family, maybe their job, maybe themselves. I mean, how many people get up at 2 a.m, get a glass of water, and then pick up their phone, and see what the news headlines. And once you got that in your head, going back to sleep is not easy, or you're going to waste some time that you could have been sleeping. So there needs to be some discipline and balance. I mean, that's why they have age limits on alcohol, right? And some countries are actually starting to put age limits on kids because they know it's not healthy. It's their society, their country, their quality of life or lack of it. So, but who's going to agree? Because I think Charles makes a great point, is there's financial elements. It's not just artistic or creative or communication. People get paid for clicks. There's YouTubers making 30, 40, 100,000 a month. They're very rare, but they're not going to stop the money press, just for some people might, but most people wouldn't. So I think you almost have to do it at your own level, in your family, with your peers. And like what we're doing is at least give some cautionary insights or perspectives to say, this could be happening, and it could be happening to you and your family. What are you doing to protect yourself? I mean, people buy insurance without a second thought, but how much do they actually insure themselves and their family from outside influences that can be negative? We got a lot of comments, so let's get right to it. The world is upside down crazy as I see it. What is there to do, gentlemen? Well, that's the whole purpose of the next 41 minutes, is to figure that one out, Leslie. Another one, research shows that sensory overload from social media diminishes our ability to focus and concentrate. No question. Jocelyn comes back with, I would agree, Leslie, on the media overload. It is important to cultivate healthy tech habits. It's like any, it's like nutrition, exercise. I mean, you got to know when to start, when to stop, and when to walk away. And I think everybody who can take a vacation, even if it's for a few hours from their phone, is doing themselves a favor because at least they'll freshen up. Some people are just riding the surf or the wave from one thing to the next. And if it's not this, it'll be something else. I can guarantee you. Um, we've got Leslie Johnson. The problem, it's already gotten away from us, and pulling back is no easy feat. I would say impossible. And it's only going to get worse, I hate to say, because there are going to be more and more ways to connect in different ways than you're doing now. Uh, I mean, we're going to be working for the machines, but not literally like people used to think, but directionally, where we're going to get messages that's going to impact our behavior. Jocelyn says, good point. I believe it's Dave.
Yeah. To Leslie's question of what do we do about it? I mean, the horse is out of the barn. And I think we talked about it last week with technology was, it's very hard to catch up, legally with laws or policies, or the nature of technology is so fast that the government can't keep up.
Mm-hmm.
And individuals can't keep up. And I say that because I'm not advocating government intervention in everything. I don't want to come across as that guy, but there are times when the government needs to step in. But more importantly, the family needs to step in, and we've lost that family unit in engagement. And it's because in some small order, kids are just so overloaded with technology that they've lost the ability to concentrate because we haven't been able to keep up with what technology is doing. It's a double-edged sword again. So, Jocelyn's point, it's in your point, Don, just like working out or eating, how do we budget our time, our focus and habits so that we do have control over what's going on in our mind and around us. I pointed out last week, and I'll bring it up again, as a father who's 9-hour drive away from his daughter, I try to keep a connection with my daughter every day. I text her, but I asked my ex-wife, I said, hey, she's not answering me. What's going on? Oh, well, she's not keeping her phone in her room anymore. Well, that's a good habit. And she's gotten to the point of turning notifications off, so she's not driven by every time the phone dings, she's looking at the phone. And that was a healthy habit. I was very proud of her, and I'll keep saying that each week if I have to, because it was something that I struggled with, because we just get caught up in technology, and social media is a big part of that.
Yeah, great point. Charles?
I think what both of you are talking about is leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Exercising, and not to be diminished at all that it's at a family level. Leadership at a family level makes a difference. I love the Mother Teresa saying, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And if all leaders did that, we might have a different planet. But what you're talking about is exercising leadership over the family unit and over the people in your world that you do actually have the ability to influence. And those things really, really do make a difference. And I think it's important to be able to shield people from events such as what we saw a couple of weeks ago. And it's telling when you look at the statistics of what Jimmy Kimmel has been through in the last week. And this is what leadership is all about. And another point of leadership was when the media said around Charlie Kirk, let's stop forwarding, or not the leaders were saying, stop forwarding that imagery. And Leslie makes a great point about, I can't see it right now. There's a few other comments, but she talks about, how it research shows that sensory overload from social media diminishes our ability to focus and concentrate. So the moment everybody saw that in 11 seconds, there was an emotional reaction, and people would have a hard time concentrating. I remember when the JFK video came out, and at that particular point, I had not seen movies, and movies weren't being made like Saving Private Ryan or other Full Metal Jacket and things like that. And I remember, now that I know the history books, it was only within 6 months of that video coming out. I was maybe 11 or 12 years old in history class, studying American history, and they showed that video. And I was shocked at how graphic it was. And it's a grainy film too. But I was just amazed. I remember in my head thinking to myself, I can't believe you're showing this to us. We're only like 11, 12 years old. What are you doing? And yet, boom, a couple weeks ago, it's there after 11 seconds or instantaneously. But yes, exercising that restraint, that's leadership. That's really great leadership. Love sailing, and when a lot of ocean yacht races are on, I will follow boats and my favorite teams, and especially ones from Canada or Hong Kong, and see how, or China, and see how they're doing. And I remember there was one boat that had a spectacular wipeout in the middle of the fearsome 50s in the Southern Ocean, and nearly lost their job, and nearly lost the plot on the boat. And they all started blaming each other. The crew started blaming each other, and then the skipper said, "Hold on a second, everybody just calm down." And just those couple of seconds where he said, "Everybody just keep your cool, everybody just calm down," that he had the presence of mind in a hugely life-threatening situation on a 60-foot yacht that's traveling about 50 miles an hour, to be able to just say to the crew, hey, take it easy, everyone just calm down, keep focused on sail the boat, okay? Nobody's at fault. We've got to work as a team. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because when you look at it, people need, they can get content, they need direction, they need context to the content. And if you follow it with like, don't send this to people who are impressionable or sensitive or might get affected, the challenge, how do you unsay something? You can't, right? It's like, it's like a bell, how do you unring a bell? Once a picture's in your mind, it's hard to get rid of it, and to some people, it's just too much. And you don't know at what point someone breaks, and whether one can draw a parallel to someone saw something and then took action, right? So you can only get people so worked up, and they got to figure out how to deal with it. So not just deal with how much they watch, but what effect it has on them. And some people act out, and it could be in different ways. Some are quality ways. Some may find a way of, adding value. And we're the guinea pigs. We're the ones who are getting exposed, along with everybody in this day and age, to what AI and technology companies are doing. The 7 biggest technology companies, the Mag 7, they call them, on Wall Street, have more value, over $10 trillion, than every country in the world except China and US. So, and that's just 7 companies who do things that aren't that country-ish, right? They don't provide a lot of water or electrical or support. But that's where priorities, to Charles' point, where tension goes, money flows. The more they can get more of that, and at a certain point, where do you go from 10 trillion, 20 trillion? There's one company, and I don't want to get too deep into it. It's a company building nuclear plants, right? It's hot because these data centers need electricity, so they're building smaller plants just to support it. Well, this company has no revenues, just announced they're going to build their first plant in 5 years. Their stock went from 47 to 120. I don't even know if people who bought that stock know what they do, but they don't know it. All they know is it was 60 yesterday, it's 70, it goes to 80. So, we're bubbling everywhere. And the support and backup of so many places are distracted. And what people are so concerned about to me, is secondary to what we have to live with, right? Philosophy, opinions, that's great. But how do you get better schools? How do you get better cities? How do you get better this? And I think one of the ways is community. You got to build that community everywhere you can to get people directed in the right way. And that's primarily to what we talked about earlier, is leadership. You know, who's at the top of the ship telling you, I got it covered. Don't worry about it. Go back to work. Enjoy your family. Versus throw some more red meat out there, you know, and see what happens, you know. And it's usually a reactionary stance instead of proactive stance, right? As soon as we see a problem, we'll plug it, you know, as opposed to let's avoid that iceberg and do everything else. So these are critical times. Time is getting faster and faster, whether you like it or not. People are losing more sleep than ever before because they're working 2 jobs, or, you know, they can't wait for their news cycle. So it's very, very interesting. But, you know, I'm also an optimist, knowing that, you know, everybody gets the leader they deserve, you know. And when people decide, here's what we need to see, which is tangible, visible, physical, none of this one day stuff. Anyways, Jocelyn comes up with a new point while I was making an old point. Another thought is, as a consultant, there is a need to cultivate online content. What is the effect on B2Bs leaning into creating content? Great question. We'll try to answer that. Dave.
A couple of thoughts I've had through the last few minutes, and I'm not trying to ignore Jocelyn here in this, but leadership is the key, absolutely. Whether it's in our life, you know, I go back to my daughter. Sometimes we have to take our own leadership and say, I'm going to pull back. And, you know, in my own case, I've decided that I don't watch the news anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I look at the headlines on 3 websites, Fox, CNN, and BBC, and I just look at the headlines. And very rarely will I go deeper. And I found that has helped my mental state. I don't worry about the state of the world as much as I used to. And the same thing with social media. When the news comes out, I see more of it on social media than I do on any website or in the news that I could get via the big 3 or 4 news services. But where I'm going with that is, what I've noticed is the increase in the number of conspiracy theories that come out because of social media and the rapidity of which it can be done. 11 seconds, you said, Charles, that we got, near instantaneous, we got the video of Charlie Kirk being assassinated. How long did it take for the first conspiracy theory to come out? I'd probably say 12 seconds. Because people were just looking at just manipulating the video in any way they could to see if there was some disparity that they couldn't explain. And that has driven conspiracy theories through the roof. And that's a problem. As far as business to business, leading on content, social media is a wonderful tool for positive for business to business, ability to get that human connection while selling their product. And I'm not going to take away from the ability from businesses to use social media. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Good point. And I'm loving this conversation. Charles?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Dave has said about B2B. And I think that, businesses need to realize that they need to stop putting content out that's putting people to sleep, to say it bluntly. They're not really selling businesses. They're selling to human beings who happen to be at work. And they need to, stop with the corporate jargon, speak like a human being, not go through a PowerPoint slide type of presentation. The people that they're speaking to are people who watch Netflix, they scroll Instagram, they have emotions, and what gets their attention is got to be really, really powerful. One of the Instagram accounts I love to watch is an account called Instagram account called Good Ads Matter, and they're some of the most highly rated commercials that have been made on the planet, and constantly, these companies or the agencies that make the videos are constantly winning awards for absolutely captivating commercials. And that's really good content. That's the kind of content where they understand they're speaking to humans and they're getting a powerful message across about their product or their service. And that would be what I'm saying, provide value first, last, and always, all the way through the way, and embrace your personal brand.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would say that everybody wants to hear your story, right? They want to know who you are, where you came from, why you are who you are, where you're going, whatever it is, they want more insight. And most people are looking to get insight from the other party, right? They're out there probing, trying to get people to get attracted to something so they can move them to another process. And, at the end of the day, the word responsibility and accountability has to have a place somewhere, whether it's in B2B or person to person. You're giving people a present. What's inside of it, is questionable. Why are you doing it? What do you expect them to get from it, not give from it? And I think until people can start adding a value proposition, because that was always key to any promotion or sales situation, is what's in it for me? What's in it for the customer? And I think to Charles's point, when you entertain people, when people walk away with value, they tend to want to come back. If it's just transactional and catch them when you can and catch some more, there's so many in the sea, well, that's a challenge to stay consistent and to build on it. So you really need a strategy. Plus, a lot of companies who are entering social media, they're just transferring the regular media to social media, right? Here's our newspaper ad or our billboard or our TV commercial. Well, that should be meant for a specific audience, not just for anybody, but it's lazy, it's easy. Just copy this, send it out, and if you got 1 million subscribers or whatever, but eventually your message is going to overshadow your product and your service. I know there's a company, I bought some water filters from them. Every day I get an email, not an email, a text. It's this name of the company. And it's like, don't you know, I just bought one 3 days ago for 2 3-month periods. You just hit me every day. You don't distinguish existing customer. I mean, there needs to be differentiation, distinction. You need people who are focused, and you need to talk to customers. I think that's the other hook. You can attract people, but now that you attract people, why don't you have a conversation? I mean, you got to find them online and then bring them offline. If you want to do business with them, you got to get them to your website. So you just can't throw a bunch of stuff and walk away and give it to the next person and hope they pick up on it, because at a certain point, open rates mean something. Participation rates mean something. Everything means something, especially when you're granular. You're hitting big blocks of people. And how do you know what worked and what didn't work? So where's the measurement to everything? Dave?
I think it's a very good point, Don. I think we go back to the opening statement. We said it a couple of times. You said strategy, I say plan, whatever it is, strategic view of how we're going to engage people. Because social media, technology are great things, but we're still people. I mean, we're using technology as a tool, but we're still, the three of us are engaging in human interaction right now with technology. So how do we lose that? Why do we lose it just because it's on social media? Mm-hmm. And it's a conundrum. It's something to ponder, I guess, but it seems so easy that, like you, I get the multiple texts from can I get your phone number? Can I get your email? And then I get 1,000 texts or emails from them. Same thing. It just has no bearing on what it was I just bought, or maybe I was just a one-time customer. I almost refuse sometimes to give my email. As you were talking and saying that, I thought about Kelly's pitch slap. Mm-hmm. I connected with you on LinkedIn. Oh, great! I'm gonna sell you something. Well, you've never asked what I'm interested in. You've never said you've looked at my profile. but you want to sell me something. You've lost me right as you come out there, and I almost want to disconnect from you and not unfriend, but not be connected with you anymore. Why would I? There's a human element that's missing. And we think that it's a wonderful tool, LinkedIn and social media, other capabilities. But if we don't have a plan and leadership for why we're going to use it or how we're going to use it, whether it's personal or business, we've lost touch with reality.
Yeah, lessons to be learned for sure. Charles?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. You need a plan or a strategy, whatever you're going to call it. You need something written down. And this is another thing is I think people often send out unfocused content, and they need to understand that they can't be for everybody. They need to establish a niche that they're going to go after. And most posts on social media that go viral, they actually go viral within a particular community. And then once that community it goes viral within that community, then it bursts through the community into other communities, and then it really takes hold. But if you really study it, you'll realize that it's actually within a specific group of individuals with some kind of common denominator that a post goes viral. And so you can't be for everybody. You need to have some kind of niche and focus on that niche. And this all comes back also to one of the original points that I made after vulnerability is the attention, that eventually money flows where attention goes. So consistent attention, money will flow in that particular direction. And this is one of the reasons why LinkedIn Lives are so powerful right now. And people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who I think it's on the cutting edge of social media at the moment and really understands the trends that are taking place, thinks that people probably have about 18 to 36 months before LinkedIn Lives become commoditized. And so this is the, less than it's around 1% of people post original native content on LinkedIn, whether that's an image, a text post, a LinkedIn Live. And you've mentioned this many times, Donald, that LinkedIn Lives have 24 times more engagement in the long haul than any other posts on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And I believe you're right, because I've been a full-time LinkedIn person for about 10 years. And every time they introduce a new product, like newsletters, they give you a lot of fuel with it. They give you a boost until they have hit a certain happy medium, and they cut that boost off and then direct you to, the next thing. Could be carousels, could be live streams. And once people get it, they move on to where they want people to go. So, there is some direction or manipulation in a way from that standpoint, but at the end of the day, it is value. And the question is, why are you here? And that goes for even just being on LinkedIn. What's the purpose? If it's just having a good time, sharing nice pictures and stories, you're successful, it's worthwhile, the cost is minimal relative to the time. But if you're serious about a direction, about attaining a goal, what is that goal to begin with? And then what is your process that you use in order to attain it? And that takes kind of a business sense, or at least a strategic sense. Because if it's not good enough for you, what's it good enough for anybody else? And it usually is a lot of people who are hoping, even that viral video. So, I've heard from people who have very little community, very little interaction, and they post something that goes nuts, right? 150,000 views, but they can't repeat it, because they don't have a process. They can tell a personal story that everybody loves. They tell another personal story, nothing happens, because you need kind of like a showrunner. You need somebody to get out in front of it. If Gary Vaynerchuk takes anything we do and posts it and promotes it, you're going to get unbelievable tailwind. So maybe that's part of it, is and that's what we're doing, is combining forces. The key against big numbers is leverage. So the more leverage you can get by other people coming together for a common purpose, the better you'll be. Another thing is identity and consistency. You know, if I'm here every week forever, people can pretty much count that this is when I'll be here and I'll be here and the time. You know, too many people are, hey, I'm hot for this and I'm cold for that, and then I'm hot again. I'll do this and I'll do that. They don't even know where they want to go. They're letting the wind blow them instead of directing the wind. So, Dave.
Yeah, I think as you guys were talking, it occurred to me that, I mean, community drives the viralness. You're right, Charles. But it depending on what your circle, how big your circle is to begin with, you may or may not get a lot of hits. But it's that one or two people that do hit it in their network. The algorithm picks up and says, okay, I'm going to shoot it out to all these other folks as well. The algorithm is playing us a bit and manipulates, you know, who determines what's going to be viral or not, quote unquote, the algorithm. I know it's not a living, breathing thing, but you know, where the attention goes, money follows, you say, flows. I think last week we used the term where we said something to the effect of, we are the product.
Mm-hmm.
The users are the product. So we have to accept that at some point we're going viral or not because the algorithm or the company has said that's important and I want other people to see it. And maybe it's a one-off. Maybe it's every week you get some hit because you just happen to hit the right button at the right time or whatever. And there's times where I've been told that on LinkedIn, if you post in the morning, great. If you post in the evening, even better, or vice versa, whatever it is, but it's always changing. So if you're not engaged with a strategic plan, you're not going to win. It's almost a job in and of itself.
Yeah, great point. Made me think of something I'll share after Charles. Charles?
Yeah, one of the people that I want to mention in addition to Gary Vee is Shanae Moret. I have a lot of respect for her creation of content and her strategy on LinkedIn. She's very, very focused on metrics. And it's very interesting because she does not really worry. She's not worried about viral at all. And yet she has almost 1 million followers on LinkedIn. And I think I first connected her with her maybe when she had about 12,000 followers a few years ago. But she's very focused. So she's not worried about posts going viral. What she is focused on is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals out of hundreds or thousands or even more that contact her and say, hey, I want you to coach me in my business relative to social media or whatever it is that they want to focus their attention on and have the money flow in that particular area. And she's very clear on data-driven metrics and has a very consistent plan, as you're talking about, Dave, and has worked that plan, faithfully. Really, really fascinating how she follows that plan. But the other thing is, I use an app called Shield. Do you use Shield or Donna? Okay, so it's actually not an app; it's a site, and they give you really outstanding aggregation of LinkedIn content metrics, which is similar to what LinkedIn would give you, but it's organized in a better dashboard than LinkedIn would organize it. And one of the things that they do is they tell you what is the advertising equivalent of your live or of your time on LinkedIn, specifically LinkedIn. You can get similar services that will do the same thing for other social media, but this one is focused exclusively on LinkedIn. And they will tell you over the course of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or even your entire lifetime on LinkedIn, back to 2016, because they started tracking that metric in 2016. And so you can't, if you're on LinkedIn longer than 2016, you can't go back that far. And they will tell you I think they call it the earned advertisement equivalent. Basically, it's the equivalent of if a brand wanted to advertise for the amount of time and engagement that an individual got on LinkedIn, what would it cost that brand to achieve that? And that is fascinating because that metric clearly shows you the monetary value of really curating good content, vulnerable, authentic content with a strategy, with a plan, as you say, Dave and Don. It's fascinating to see those metrics. And they will have you look at things. For example, you might have an engage, they'll be constantly reminding you of something. For example, you might have a post that has very, very low engagement, but it attracted a high number of profile views. And they will say, why was that? So go figure out what content was it that you posted 85 days ago where you got a spike in profile views. Why were people looking at your profile? And go study those, see if you can find out who those people were. Because usually they will be leaving some kind of engagement cookie crumb. But the comment we made last week, Dave, was if you're not paying for something on the internet or not paying for AI or a service, then chances are you are the product.
Yeah, and I think that brings to mind, when we're talking about big numbers, vanity numbers even, one has to not expect that people who connect are going to be connections, right? People who subscribe to your newsletter are going to read your newsletter, So I know I've got big numbers, but small interaction. And that's also maybe a dual responsibility on my part as well as the other people's part. But people are always thinking someone else will do something they wouldn't do for someone, right? How much business do you do on LinkedIn, right? How many times you purchase anybody's stuff that either sends it directly to you or represents something in their post? Not much. So, again, it's trying to take the physical real world that people are used to and applying that to this world. In the physical world, you actually got to do things. You got to go places. You got to get on the phone. You got to make something happen. Here, just hit send and you'll let the magic work. And usually it doesn't. The other thing about social media, it's not a do it and not do it. If you start it, you got to complete it, support it, and expand it, or what's the point? You look at YouTube. I've got 1,000 hours almost of programming. I could create unlimited stuff, shorts, this and that, and this and that. But for what purpose? Unless one's going to use it to do speaking, writing, you name it, and tie it together. Because you've got to come up with your own monetization plan to your effort, especially if you want to be responsible for what you're doing and what you're getting. So I think it's a balance to say, here's my investment, here's my knowing return on that investment. Some of it could be satisfaction. Some of it could be helping people. Some of it could be just doing it because you like doing it. The other part is, how do I get more than this? And that's a key question. And then, again, LinkedIn's one thing, YouTube's one thing. We're talking about Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. I mean, all these social media, and those are the common ones. You go below that and you got all kinds of different varieties. And most people are stretched among many of them and are not a very good expert on any of them. So, it probably someone who could come in and tie it together. I was even thinking a great service is come to somebody like me who has all this content, doesn't have the time or the interest to develop it. So it's like having mineral rights. Someone's got to go in there and dig it, mine it, and do something with it. Again, how does that work? Who knows? That's another business model. And if you stack one business model on another and do a multiple of things, you're going to be busy. Whether you're going to be productive or it's going to be rewarding is a question mark. Dave.
Help if I came off mute, but I know we're coming up on the hour, and just so many things to consider when it comes to social media. I think what we've kind of divided our time here between social media for personal purposes and for business purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them require a plan. I will harp on a planning because I think so many of us, and me included at times, and Don and I have talked about it, where I'm kind of floating through life right now myself, but even with that floating, I have a plan of, okay, I will not abuse social media. I will not get sucked into the vortex of hours of just scrolling and doom scrolling. And we're all guilty of it at some level, whether it's 5 minutes or a couple hours, we just scroll. But from a business perspective, it's a much deeper effort that has to be undertaken, that connecting with people, getting beyond the technology piece of it, understanding what your product is and who your customer could be. It takes a lot of analysis, and you need help with that. So I divide our efforts today into social media for personal versus business, and both of them require plans. Both of them require intention, and leadership is not, as Charles pointed out very early.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of bases, and you specifically outlined quite a few important ones, Dave. So thank you very much. Charles.
Yeah, we've swung on the spectrum. I think that, social media satisfies two human needs: certainty and uncertainty. It's brilliant in the sense that it satisfies our need for certainty, connection, and routine, and uncertainty in terms of newness and variety. And the most engaging content balances kind of both of those and gives a familiar value in a new and surprising way. And that's what causes things to uplift. But I do also think that there's a huge amount of power in the content that you've created, Don. And even Gary Vaynerchuk would say you could take all this content that you're making on LinkedIn Lives and you can condense it down into, what are the top 20, 25 things that Donald Cohen says are most important about social media based on doing how many hundreds? Oh, you're coming up to 1,000 LinkedIn Lives. When is?
Well, it'll be a while. I'm about 60 away and doing one a week. We're about 14 months from that.
Okay.
We're doing once a day. That would have been about 2 months or so.
But think about the use of AI technology we talked about last week. It can analyze all that for you in minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And people would much rather, have you, Donald, for example, say, here are the top 10 things that I've learned after X number of live sessions or X number of years on LinkedIn. And people will pay attention to that content as opposed to going through 1,000 hours and try to capture it. And that's actually what I do in my executive coaching as well. I use AI, content aggregation, to be able to work with helping my clients study themselves and really analyze the things that they're forgetting.
Yeah, those are terrific points, and I agree with you, Dave and Charles. Is one of the reasons for waiting is there will be a convergence that you can just say, here's 960 videos, okay, get rid of all the oohs and ahs and everything else, which brings it down, but also just look for this and organize it, create it, and that gets done. So having the raw content and the raw material is where the value is. How you parse it, how you distribute it is all a matter of when you want to go to work with it. But how many people are working on paintings that for 30 years they put a touch here and they don't release it, or they create a painting for themselves, right? And it's not for public awareness or sale. And so, there's a secondary unknown benefit because we get the direct benefit right now of us three talking, whether there's an audience or not. The second benefit is the audience who's live with us, who is able to generate some benefit from it. The next audience is the future audience that, I've got probably 50,000 views on YouTube just by having 900 videos. If you got 40 views, you're up to 40,000. So that can be multiplied. Again, for what purpose? And I think one thing we have to relate to is life balance, quality of life. When you got a great life, do you want to put too much emphasis in an area that really isn't going to give you the payback that's as important as your family or yourself or your health? And I think that's where discipline comes into all areas. To say, you only eat so much for lunch, right? You stop at a hamburger, maybe two. but you don't just every time a hamburger served up, you eat it. And we're kind of suckers for the next hook, the next catchphrase that we want to see what it is. And I think growing up, like in schools, you have cliques, right? The smart kids, the athletic kids, and maybe you didn't fit in, but you didn't fit out, right? You just weren't around them, and you had your own little group. Well, now once people got your email and your text number, you're going to get messages you don't want, you don't care about, some you may need, some you may not filter. It's a lot of work to keep up with all that stuff just from a receiving standpoint. From a sending standpoint, now you've multiplied it. And I don't know where the human being is going to be in these situations, because we don't grow new fingers every other week like technology grows capabilities. And also they know, just like Charles outlined, all our behaviors, where we go, when we go, what we do when we get there. And they change the algorithm to continue to drag us in when normally we wouldn't wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to be interacting with this person who's going to send me a message I have no knowledge about. And it may be good, may be bad. So I think if anything, knowledge is power. Getting around people, have these conversations. And I think we must have come up with 80 or 90 ideas or opinions or thoughts that someone could distill and say, I got 5, 6 good takeaways that could help me frame what I'm doing or understand what's being done. Just knowing the ballpark you're in will help you play the game. And sometimes we don't even know to that extent. Well, it's 1:01. Last words, Dave, Charles?
Nope. I'm good.
Well, I would encourage people to be vulnerable and speak from their heart, and don't worry about, I agree with having a plan and a strategy, but not to the point where your content looks like it's commercialized. Speak from the heart, be spontaneous. Yes, be prepared and rehearse, but be vulnerable.
Golden words I hope everybody has heard and can retain and leverage and utilize going forward. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, audience. Come back in a week and we'll try to do it again. Appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful day.